So, I'm getting remarried. Can you leave and get divorced? Don't leave a single thing of yours behind. She doesn't want to see anything that belongs to you.
Susan, completely attached to Mike, and Mike, the ultimate mama's boy. My husband and I never had children.
My cheating partner got pregnant, so I'm going to divorce you.
One day, Mike told me that. I've made many wrong choices in my life, but this time, I won't make the wrong one. This is my story of turning my life around. I'm Kate, 51 years old. My life has been a complete failure. When I was little, my parents divorced, and when I was in middle school, I got news that my dad had passed away. My mom and I said our final goodbyes at the cemetery, but the man in the casket looked like a stranger to me. Lately, I've been wondering, what has my life even been about? When I was 30, I married my husband, Mike, who was 3 years younger than me. Mike also grew up in a single-parent household with just his mother. However, unlike my mom, who raised me on her own without any child support, Mike's father passed away from an illness about a year after Mike started working, so his situation was a bit different from mine.
He had cancer insurance and had already started working, so my mom has been a stay-at-home mom ever since.
When I went to meet Mike's mother, Susan, before the wedding, she said to me,
Mike can be a little spoiled sometimes, so I'm happy someone responsible like you is marrying him. Newlyweds should have time to themselves, so don't worry about me.
I thought she was an understanding person, so I decided to marry Mike. I thought I could get along well with her, even though I might end up living with her. But when our marriage was decided, and we had to look for a new house, Mike said,
I'm worried about leaving my mom alone, so I'd like us to live together. We'll probably have kids in a few years anyway, and then we'd end up living together.
It wasn't just the idea of wanting to live together. The way he said it also bothered me. Probably in a few years. Did he really need to say probably? Still, I figured it might be nice to have someone at home to help out, especially since I plan to keep working for the time being, so I agreed to live with his mom. After high school, I got a job at a local delivery company near my mom's house because I didn't want to burden her financially. I like driving, and I thought it suited me better than doing office work. At first, I delivered small packages in a small car, but before long, I was driving larger trucks and earning more than most women my age. Mike worked in general affairs department at one of the companies I frequently delivered to. He was decent looking in his own way and had a gentle demeanor.
Kate, you're always so full of energy. Whenever you come by, it feels like you bring some of that energy with you.
I found myself liking him after that. Eventually, he asked me out for dinner, and we started dating. We got married when I was 30, and Mike was 27. By the way, I've always seemed to attract slightly mama's boyish, needy guys. I've been a truck driver, played basketball in high school, and at 5'7" and 145 pounds, I'm pretty solidly built for a woman. Maybe it's just a stereotype, but I feel like strong masculine men who exude confidence prefer more delicate women, and they don't really go for someone like me. In fact, Mike seemed like a slightly timid mama's boy. However, after we got married, I realized he wasn't just a little bit of a mama's boy. He was very much one. And while I thought he was shy and gentle, he turned out to be quite selfish and bossy. We started our married life in Mike's family's rental apartment. It had a room for Susan, our bedroom, and a separate room for Mike. Our bedroom was originally a study that Mike's late father used, but they'd put a bed in it for us. I didn't have my own room, but since I was at work during the day and my truck felt like my own private space, not having a personal room at home didn't really bother me.
Kate, you're working after all. Leave the housework to me.
That's what Susan told me, and since we were both working, our combined income would double. I imagined a bright future where we could save money, buy a bigger apartment, or even build a house. Susan's cooking wasn't bad, but it didn't quite align with the taste I had developed over 30 years. My mom was an excellent cook, and I would sometimes crave her cooking terribly. Even so, I hesitated to cook myself, thinking Susan might not feel good about it. Little by little, dissatisfaction and stress started to build up. I realized how important eating habits are in marriage. Shortly after we got married, when I cooked for the first time on one of my days off, Mike said,
"This is kinda bland and unsatisfying. Honestly, Mom's cooking is way better."
Mike, you shouldn't say things like that. Kate doesn't have as much cooking experience as I do, so it can't be helped.
Susan gently scolded Mike, looking somewhat pleased. I was at a loss for where to even begin addressing this. The food seemed bland only because their usual meals were overly seasoned, but I couldn't understand why they had to compare Susan's cooking to mine like that. Mike, nearing 30, still couldn't cut the apron strings, and Susan was so confident in her cooking that she seemed almost smug. It felt like Susan was looking down on me, the daughter-in-law who couldn't cater to Mike's specific tastes. On the surface, Susan was kind, did almost all the housework, and even showed appreciation for my job.
Some people complain about in-law troubles, but my mom is great. You're lucky, aren't you?
Mike often said things like that, but I couldn't help feeling that he was elevating Susan while belittling me. Still, I figured that if I said anything negative about Susan, I'd end up being seen as the bad one. About 6 months into our marriage, I wasn't feeling well one day, so I left work early in the morning and came home, lying down in my bed to rest. It seemed like Susan had gone out shopping, and after a while, she came back. However, she didn't notice that I was home and started talking on the phone with someone who seemed to be her friend.
You know, we spent all that money on a good college and a good job for Mike, and the wife he brings home is a high school graduate truck driver.
Hearing Susan's voice, I froze in bed.
She doesn't help with any of the housework, and she looks just like a man. I don't even know what Mike saw in her to marry her.
I had suspected that she didn't think very highly of me, but hearing this made me realize just how little she thought of me, and it was a real shock. I heard everything, Susan. What's that supposed to mean? If you've got something to say it to my face. Maybe it would have been better if I had said that. But instead, I pretended I hadn't heard anything. I even waited for Susan to go to the bathroom so I could pretend I had just come home from work. After that, I started keeping an emotional distance from Susan. At the same time, I began to feel something close to disgust toward Mike, who was so clingy with her. I couldn't stand how Mike constantly compared Susan and me in every little thing. Even after 2 years of marriage, Mike and I still didn't have any children.
Kate, you're almost 32, aren't you? If you keep dragging your feet, you'll be over 35, and then it'll be a late pregnancy. Mike just turned 30, though.
That's what Susan started saying to me. I began to think seriously about fertility treatments, So I brought it up with Mike.
No way. If you want to do it, just do it yourself.
He said, reacting like a grade schooler. I tried explaining that fertility treatments require both partners to participate to be effective, but he showed no interest whatsoever. Left with no choice, I decided to consult Susan.
Well, of course he doesn't want to. There's no way Mike has any problems.
She said with absolute confidence. I didn't know why she could say that so definitively, but her tone made it sound like everything was my fault. I got angry and couldn't help but say strongly back to her, "How can you be so sure? Do you know for a fact he's had children before?"
No, of course not.
Susan's face showed clear signs of distress, like she'd let something slip. "Then you can't know whether he has a problem or not, can you?"
I do know. This is from the past, and I didn't want to say anything. But when Mike was in college, he got his girlfriend pregnant.
I was shocked. We were both at an age where having past relationships wasn't an issue at all, but I never imagined he had fathered a child. What? And what happened to the baby?
Don't be ridiculous. They were still students. They had their whole future ahead of them. A baby was out of the question. I gave the girl some money and sent her to the clinic. It was a good thing she told me early on.
I could feel myself turning pale. I couldn't believe that Mike's first reaction to his girlfriend's pregnancy was to consult Susan, nor could I fathom how he allowed his mother to take money to the woman and have the baby terminated. What happened to the girl he was dating?
I don't know. They broke up right after that, it seems.
Thinking about how that girl must have felt at the time made my heart ache. If Mike had been honest with me about this story, maybe things would have been different. Susan, who doted on Mike and secretly didn't think much of me as his wife, and Mike, the oblivious mama's boy. I often wondered if it was worth continuing our marriage, but without a decisive reason for divorce, I couldn't bring myself to make the leap. In the end, we didn't pursue fertility treatments, and while things seemed harmonious on the surface, our days passed with a cold indifference beneath it all. No matter what I felt deep down, it seemed that Mike and Susan didn't care at all. As long as they were happy living together, that was all that mattered to them. For years, Susan kept saying she wanted to see grandchildren, but I don't think she meant it. After living with her for years, I realized something. She didn't want me to have kids and take any sort of pride in it, nor did she want Mike's attention to shift from her to a child. In the end, I never got pregnant, and now I'm 50. The only significant change was that we built a house when I was 40. At least our jobs were going well, and neither of us had expensive hobbies, so we decided to get our own home. Looking back, maybe it would have been better to decide on divorce instead of building a house. Even though we managed to put down a large deposit, we couldn't pay for the house outright, so we had to take out a mortgage. That ended up tying us down. Still, the new house had a room of my own, giving me a personal space where I could spend my time, and that satisfied me to some extent. Mike didn't abuse me, neglect his job, or gamble. I told myself there were plenty of women out there enduring far worse husbands and carried on. Nowadays, the three of us no longer eat together, and Susan has stopped preparing meals for me. I no longer feel the need to be considerate of her and simply cook and eat whatever I like. I was still working as a driver, had moved up in my job, and earned a decent income. My life was comfortable. But recently, I started to suspect that Mike might be seeing someone else. Surprisingly, I didn't feel jealous or angry. If anything, I thought it might finally lead to a divorce. I even packed a suitcase with my essentials and left it in the closet, ready to grab it when the day came. Life, they say, is a series of choices and decisions. I'm sure I faced many such moments. Maybe I didn't always make the right choices, but who can say for sure? I'm not particularly unhappy, nor am I especially happy. I'm not wealthy, but I'm not poor either. Having passed the halfway point of my life, I sometimes wonder if this life I've lived has been good enough. One day, Mike said to me,
So I'm getting remarried. Can you leave and get divorced? Don't leave a single thing of yours behind. She doesn't want to see anything that belongs to you.
"So it's finally happening," I thought, feeling completely indifferent.
She's pregnant. A useless wife who couldn't even have kids has no place here. Leave immediately.
Susan added, dismissing me coldly. As always, Susan was firmly on Mike's side, and their close-knit mother-son bond remained unchanged. "Understood," I said, pulling out my phone and making a call. "Hello, I'm leaving the house now. Please arrange for the move."
What?
Mike and Susan were stunned as I arranged for the move in 2 seconds flat. The reason I could handle this sudden divorce so calmly goes back about a month. It was my day off, and I had gone shopping at a shopping complex near the train station. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me.
Excuse me. May I have a moment of your time?
I turned around to see a tall, distinguished gentleman with graying hair standing there. "Yes, I'm not interested in sales, solicitations, or religion, if that's what this is about." That's what I usually say when a stranger approaches me in a public place.
It's not sales. I have something I'd like to discuss with you.
He looked kind, but his sharp eyes gave him an air of intensity. "What is it?" I asked, thinking it couldn't possibly be a pickup attempt. The words he spoke next took me completely by surprise.
Mike is having an affair. I'd like to discuss it with you.
"What?" I wasn't as shocked by the news of his affair itself as I was by the fact that a complete stranger was the one telling me. I'd had my suspicions about Mike's infidelity, so this wasn't particularly surprising. Intrigued, I decided to hear the man out, and we went to a nearby coffee shop to talk.
I deeply apologize for bringing this up so suddenly.
As he said this, the gentleman handed me his business card, which bore the title of CEO of a prominent local company and the name Robert. Having worked as a driver in this area for many years, I knew about it. Drivers often share client information with each other, and this practice is quite extensive. It's primarily to avoid potential trouble. The company Robert managed was once founded by a group formerly referred to as a gang, but had since transformed into a legitimate, successful business. To the public, it appeared to be just an ordinary company, and most people probably had no idea of its past. However, the company seemed to employ more than a few employees with rather intimidating appearances. I felt a cold sweat forming. Could it be that Mike got involved with the wife of someone dangerous in this company? But that wasn't the case.
The woman Mike is having an affair with is my sister, Emma. There's quite an age gap between them, though.
What? This was unexpected. Not his wife, but his sister. Noticing my puzzled expression, Robert slowly began to explain.
5 years ago, Emma lost both her husband and her 5-year-old son in a car accident caused by her husband's driving.
The story started with something I had not anticipated at all.
Emma was severely injured and traumatized by the accident, leading to a mental breakdown. She spent several years in a hospital. She was discharged 2 years ago, and for the past year, she has been working a few hours a day as a waitress at a coffee shop as part of her rehabilitation. It seems that's where she met Mike.
It seemed that the coffee shop was part of Robert's restaurant group. His genuine concern for his much younger sister, Emma, and his determination to support her were evident.
I'm truly sorry, but Emma is now 3 months pregnant. She's already 43 years old, and she feels that if she misses this chance, she'll never have a child. She is determined to go through with the pregnancy. I know this situation is morally questionable, but after losing both her husband and child, I can't help but feel sympathy for Emma. If possible, I want to help her achieve this dream.
Robert pleaded with me earnestly, his expression serious. Sure.
What?
Robert seemed surprised by my straightforward response. It would be strange to say I'm happy about it, but I'll get a divorce. Mike and I don't have kids, and if there's someone who needs them, then it's probably better that way.
Well, but I'm sorry. Thank you. I'll make sure you're compensated appropriately.
I knew that when one spouse cheats, it's possible to demand compensation from the affair partner. I don't plan to take anything from Emma. I'll get the compensation from Mike. We've been married for 20 years, built a house, and saved money. I'll make sure we split the assets fairly before I leave. Feeling oddly cheerful, I said this.
If you need a lawyer, please don't hesitate to contact me. And if there's anything else we can do, just let me know.
I assumed he had a top-notch lawyer on standby, and then I said, well, there is one thing I'd like to ask.
Of course, if it's something I can do.
When Mike brings up our divorce, I plan to leave immediately. Would it be possible for you to arrange the move for me at that time? I had thought about asking the moving company I worked for, but explaining the situation seemed like a hassle. Robert looked a bit surprised and said,
Is that all? If that's the case, I'll arrange for our group's moving company to handle it. Just call me when the time comes. Have you decided on a new place to live?
No, I'll start looking for a small apartment tomorrow where I can live with my mom.
In that case, let me refer you to one of our affiliated real estate companies. They'll find you a good place with no deposit or key money required.
Impressed by how wide-ranging his business operations were, I decided to take him up on his offer. There's one thing I'd like to mention. As his wife, I have to say, Mike isn't exactly a catch. He's overly attached to his mother, and his personality leaves a lot to be desired. Is Emma okay with someone like that? When I said this, Robert smiled warmly.
Well, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. If Emma has fallen for him, so be it. But if he ever makes her cry, I won't stand for it.
His smile was pleasant, but there was an undeniable intensity behind it. With someone like Robert backing her, neither Susan nor Mike would dare to neglect Emma. After hanging up from arranging the move, I turned to Mike and said, You're divorcing me because of your infidelity, so you'll be paying alimony. I'll also be taking my share of the house and savings as part of the asset division.
What?
Mike and Susan both exclaimed at the same time. Of course, any assets accumulated during a marriage are equally owned by both partners. As for the alimony, $50,000 will suffice.
You've got to be kidding. Why should I pay that kind of money to a useless wife like you?
Yeah, I'm not paying anything.
Well, this was exactly the kind of reaction I had expected. At that moment, a sleek black luxury car pulled up in front of the house. The doorbell rang, and Mike, peeking out the window, said with a puzzled expression,
There's some expensive-looking car parked in front of the house.
When I opened the door, there stood Robert.
I'm here to pick you up. The movers will arrive shortly.
Dressed in an expensive-looking suit, Robert's presence left Mike and Susan unsure how to react. This is Emma's older brother.
What?
Oh well, nice to meet you.
Susan looked startled, and Mike seemed utterly confused. Robert, thank you for coming all this way. I was just discussing the asset division and alimony, but it seems they have no intention of paying.
I see. That's unfortunate. In that case, I'll arrange for a lawyer to handle it.
Wait a minute. Why is Emma's brother getting involved in this? And how do you even know him?
Robert came to speak with me for Emma's sake. Also, he's the CEO of a major, well-known company in this area. Hearing this, Susan and Mike's faces briefly lit up. Maybe they thought this was their ticket to wealth. He's legitimate now, but he used to be part of a gang.
You noticed, did you?
Robert chuckled wryly. Well, I've been a driver in this area for years. When you handed me your business card, I recognized the company name immediately. Upon hearing the word gang, Susan and Mike visibly started to panic. Don't worry, it's a proper, respectable company now. But if Emma ends up crying or unhappy, who knows what might happen? I said this with a cheerful smile. After that, a thoroughly intimidated Mike and Susan reluctantly agreed to the division of assets and the payment of alimony with almost no resistance. I signed the prepared divorce papers, instructed the movers who had arrived to pack up my belongings, and headed for the front door with my suitcase, feeling unusually lighthearted. Robert arranged for me to stay in a luxury condo near the train station. The spacious interior was already furnished with basic furniture, and the balcony was large enough to play catch-on. Yet, the rent was as low as that of a small studio apartment. I protested, saying I couldn't accept such generosity, but Robert wouldn't hear of it.
Emma took your husband, Mike, away from you. You have every right to demand more.
No, this is more than enough. I've been indecisive and put off dealing with problems for too long, but I think deep down, I was waiting for a chance to start fresh. So honestly, I should be the one thanking you. When I said this, Robert looked at me with a hint of admiration. Life is said to last 100 years, so I figure I'm at the halfway point. From now on, I want to enjoy the rest of my life doing what I love. The balcony is spacious enough for a home garden, and maybe I'll get a big dog. I might even reset my career and take some time to travel. Feeling both physically and emotionally lighter, I found myself sharing these excited thoughts with him.
That sounds wonderful. I think traveling with you would be a lot of fun.
His words made my heart skip a beat for a moment. I ensured that I received a fair share of the assets and alimony from Mike. Since dividing the house in half wasn't feasible, I let Mike and Susan keep it in exchange for cash. Considering the remaining bank balance, Mike was left nearly penniless. On top of that, the mortgage still had 5 years remaining.
You stole someone else's husband. So as a penalty, I won't be helping you or Mike. You two will have to figure out how to be happy together.
Robert reportedly told Emma. Despite Robert's past as a gang member, Mike and Susan had expected that marrying the sister of the CEO of a major company would mean financial support and special privileges. However, their expectations were dashed, leaving them visibly displeased. However, unable to complain to Robert directly, Mike ended up working 2 jobs. And surprisingly, Susan has also started working part-time recently. This was because Emma was exceptionally skilled at housework, and her cooking was so good that even Mike, who adored his mother, couldn't help but be impressed. With Emma being pregnant, they decided to leave all the housework to her. Having never worked before, Susan found the situation extremely unpleasant. Combined with the stress of her unfamiliar part-time job as a cashier at a supermarket, she reportedly began to harass Emma with small, petty actions daily. When Mike didn't defend her against Susan's behavior, Emma quickly decided to cut her losses. Shortly after safely giving birth, she divorced him. It seemed she had married Mike more for the sake of her child than out of love for him. Robert said he would ensure child support was collected properly. In the end, all Mike and Susan were left with was a house with an outstanding mortgage. They lost their savings, children, and even a wife. Well, they're a close mother and son, so they can grow old together. If they end up regretting it while caring for each other in old age, that's none of my concern. As for me, I'm enjoying a fulfilling life, eating my mom's delicious cooking every day and going to work. After all, my mom's cooking is the best. Since then, Robert and I have been going out for meals and watching movies together, almost like a couple. Robert lost his wife 10 years ago, and we're both happily single. We're not thinking about getting married, but we enjoy spending time together. I've met Emma as well. She's a sweet, reserved, and dependable woman. She had a baby girl, and while I have no blood relation to her, I can't help but feel a connection. I adore her as if she were my niece. I've been thinking it's time to go on that trip I mentioned before. I've worked at my company for years, so I think they'll let me take some extended time off. I said this over drinks at a private dining room in a restaurant with amazing food.
Would it be all right if I joined you on that trip?
What? I don't mind, but
Actually, why don't we call it a honeymoon instead?
really? Though we had been acting like a couple, I didn't think either of us was considering marriage.
I'd like to promise to spend the rest of my life with you. Would that be all right?
You're asking for a promise. That's a very romantic thing to say. When I said that teasingly, Robert looked at me with a serious expression.
I'm serious.
His words made my heart flutter in a way I hadn't felt in years. All right, let's go on this trip together, and if we don't end up disliking each other by the end, let's get married. Robert readily agreed to my proposal. What was originally supposed to be a 10-day solo trip to Europe turned into a luxurious, month-long world tour for the two of us. Robert's escorting was perfect, and far from disliking him, we didn't have a single argument. It was a dreamlike, incredibly happy month-long trip. Toward the end of our trip, at an old church in England, Robert handed me a diamond ring unlike anything I'd ever seen and proposed to me once again. Of course, I accepted. Preparing the ring before the trip and proposing at a romantic church, it was just too perfect. After we returned home, we held a wedding reception with our close family and friends. Our new home after the wedding is Robert's spacious estate. He had lived there alone for many years after losing his first wife, but thanks to a housekeeper who came regularly, every room was beautifully maintained. Since Robert welcomed the idea, I ended up living there with my mom. My 75-year-old mom is still full of energy and eagerly takes on the task of cleaning every corner of the big house. Robert told me I could quit my job if I wanted to, but with my mom taking care of the housework and the idea of being a wealthy lady not quite suiting me, I decided to continue working at the delivery company. My mom's delicious cooking has also become a big hit with Robert. I've made plenty of mistakes in life and had my share of regrets, but if the ending is good, everything else doesn't matter. These days, I feel so happy that I truly believe that. On our next day off, Robert and I are planning to visit a dog adoption event together.